Greetings, and today we are here to take a look at some more cards that were revealed from the Master Mirror expansion since, I believe, last week. So I'm not quite sure if I'm going to make this a weekly series on the channel, at least until the expansion comes out, but since my last reaction of the Master Mirror expansion, more cards have been revealed by various content creators and streamers, and we are here to take a look at them today. Now, by the time I record this video, I will only look at the cards that I have seen so far up to the point of this recording. The video itself gets released in the future, which means by the time this video comes out, there are certain cards that I have not covered yet, which I will probably cover in the next installation of this series. Now, I took the weekend off from content creating because I had the whole week every day where I was uploading video after video, so I decided to take the weekend off, and now I'm back to my regular schedule. And of course, another thing, I have created permanent links now to my Discord, which means that no matter which video you go to, you should now see one link, and that link should be valid. I know some of you have stumbled upon my streams and have told me such that some of my links were expired, and I have now rectified that error. So now you are welcome to join my Discord again in the description below. Now, I am taking a look at the cards that have been released since my last reaction video on the Team Bandit Gang website, where they have this article on the overview and speculation of this expansion, and of course they update it daily, if not semi-daily, but they definitely update it frequently enough, or at least as frequent as our article writer is available. So as you can see on the tabs up top, not every card was revealed. Not every card that got revealed is on the article, which means that, and those are the cards that got leaked in the past day or two. So we will definitely be looking at them at their respective Twitter pages. Now, let us begin with this lovely lady looking right at us. I came across this fortune teller in my travels, and she told me to return exactly a few days before the expansion trailer was announced, which means she gave me a bit of a premonition of sorts. This expansion was coming out, so I am eternally grateful for her. But in terms of her card interpretation, she has a melee ability of giving doom to a unit, and deploy, well, it's meant to be ranged, that was specified, to give veil to a unit. Now this card is a bit of an interesting one because doomed is going to be, if there is a trend of support going to doom similar to this nature, I fear we may see a reincarnation of poison, but perhaps on a more destructive level, since doomed has the ability to actually destroy combos, especially those that rely on reviving the graveyard and consuming from them as well. So monsters and Skellige are going to be major enemies for the fortune teller. In fact, any card that has doomed, if we're being honest. Any card that also thinks about running Renew or running Necromancy or even Experimental Remedy, no one would be foolish enough to run a Nilfgaard deck with doomed units and Experimental Remedy unless you're very selective of the cards that you choose to banish. Now, of course, if you don't like the dark side of the fortune teller, there is her good luck side, which can give Veil. And Veil, of course, as we already know, is able to give immunity to status to a unit. But of course, I believe this is a status in itself, which means it can be purified, but expending that extra purify just to get rid of the veil before you start poisoning is an extra turn, not sort of wasted, but diverted to a different cause. So I can definitely see her being a troublesome card at a 4/4. She definitely gives Thanks of the Empire vibes, but for me personally, as a character, as a person, and as a card, this should be exciting to witness, and I can't wait to put her in my featured decks. Of course, there is also they also put a bit of a caption as to like the card, as to like how they got it, what it does, sort of their initial thoughts on it. Of course, it's hard to give like a 4 or 5 paragraph thoughts on a card like this, especially if you've only seen like 10% of the collection. But moving on, we have ourselves here a very fine looking creature, definitely not old and ugly and chubby at all, but I will admit the art is tremendous. And this card was a winner in a previous art contest that occurred years ago, and now they are finally using this card in an expansion. Meet the All God. I am not familiar with this being, of course, but what it does is pure carryover value. Its true power comes from the carryover value. A lot of speculation comes from this card potentially being comboed by the Witchers, which are of course 2 power at their current state, but boosted by the All God can become 4 power, which could potentially mean that you could have a 12 power Witcher combo in your hands from the All God ability. Of course, that always comes at a price. The All God himself is nothing but a 4 power card for 11 provisions, so when it comes to giving yourself value right then and there, you're just not getting it. This card is pure conservative. It's meant to save for the next round or two depending on when you decide to use it, but the carryover value will still be valuable, but in terms of instantaneous play, not so much on the value side. But again, this card should be interesting to see. Perhaps it can give a bit of a slight boost to perhaps hand buff scoia'tael, which, let's be honest, has been on the obscurity as of late. In fact, as of the past year or so. But we'll see if the All God can perhaps give it a bit of a comeback, but somehow I doubt that. Next, we have Pact. Now, the story behind Pact is, of course, Gaunter O'Dem likes to put all those who agree to his deals, he puts a mark of Pact to them, as, of course, witnessed by the Great Witcher himself. Now, this one, I believe, was revealed by Ryan Godric. Oh, correct me if I'm wrong. But what Pact does is you boost a unit by 6, but the downside is you give it Doomed. This card, and it's a bronze card. This is the epic was a bit of a typo. But this card, I think, will be a bit interesting because if you choose to give Doom to your opponent, you are giving away 6 points to them. So again, in terms of that value right away, you're not exactly getting it. But if you can destroy that unit and prevent it from ever coming back, it may be worth it. So for example, if you give Pact through a card, let's say like the Crow Mother, you do give it 10 power, like total of 10 power, but it will not come back, which means that their Getinates will not work. At least it won't work in bringing back Crow Mother. In fact, no alchemy cards will work on Crow Mother just because she is nowhere to be seen. But be careful when you play this card because, again, you are giving away 6 points of value for 4 provisions. But Doom perhaps can be a bit of a problem. But again, we're already seeing other cards that have the Doomed mechanic, so I have a feeling that this card could have been readjusted a bit differently. And that's just strictly because I feel like there could be more Doom support as we see more LEEK cards coming by. Next, we have a very familiar foe. This was a very nuisance of an enemy that I had to deal with in The Witcher 3, and that is Ethereal. Ethereal, of course, was leaked by the Out of Focus podcast, and it has Doomed itself, which means that if this card gets destroyed, you will never see it again. At the end of your turn, transform a non-demon unit to the right into a base copy of itself. Now, of course, this card can prove to be quite the swarm card, especially if it remains on the field, because every turn, let's say you use it on a drone or a rat, which my guess would be the best value that this card can get out of it. You transform a 1 power card into a 4 power card, or perhaps if your opponent plays spies, they play Duchess's Informant to you, they play Joachim, they play Roderick, you can transform them all into Ethereals, and they all become 4 power, which just adds more value to your side of the field. Now, of course, in order for this to work, you must be able to summon units, so again, the best option for this may be Swarm, but be careful of Doom, because if you don't purify it, then F3 will never come back, but if you choose to destroy it, you can use Renew to bring it back, unless of course they just straight up banish it, in which case, there's nothing you can do about it. But Assuming all that doesn't happen, Ethereal definitely has potential to be a great swarm engine and cause some havoc on the battlefield. We can see ourselves 18 Ethereals that can just cause some damage and of course have some fun for the player playing it, assuming that it doesn't get destroyed instantly, of course. Next, we have a card called Offering. I believe this one was revealed by a Spanish team / group. I'm not so familiar with that. So what this card does is it damages a unit by 1. And if it manages to destroy that unit, you can play a bronze unit from your graveyard and give it duped. Now of course this card is a cheaper version of Necromancy, which is good, because in my monsters deck, I do have Necromancy to bring back a third set of Endrega eggs. Endrega larvas, I should say. Unfortunately, the one downside to this is it must be able to destroy a unit with 1 health. Which means that if you're running fruits, it might not be a bad option because again, you do have the Fruits of Isgith, which is exactly 1 power, which means Offering can bring back an Endrega larva for free pretty much, because you can always bring the fruit back. Which means that I can actually upgrade my Necromancy to an Offering and, well, essentially, technically that's downgrade, but you can upgrade another card in turn, which will make for really good value considering the Fruits of Isgith is already at such a low provisional addition at 11 as it is. Every provision point is important, especially to low bonus card abilities. So that's the one good thing. You can also potentially use it in a Aracha Swarm deck because they do rely on drones, which are also 1 power. So if you need to revive something there, then that is an option for you as well. Next, we have Seditious Aristocrats. Now, what this card does, essentially, for those of you who never played closed beta or open beta, this ability was once possessed by the Impera Brigades. Now the Impera Brigades summon a copy of themselves. But what this card, it has taken back that ability. And it has taken it from the Impera Brigades, and has taken it from themselves. On deploy with Devotion, which means you cannot have neutral cards with this. You boost yourself by 1 for every spying enemy unit. Whenever an enemy unit gains spying, boost self by 1. In the past, when Gwent was more chaotic, this ability would actually add quite a bit of points to Nilfgaard, and now that it's back, it might do the same again, especially with the card that is what we're going to see next. Not only does it get boosted right on deployment, but it has the ability to gain additional boost whenever spying is showing up on the opponent's side of the field, which can mean that this card could be just as devastating, if not more devastating than Thirsty Dame, or perhaps equal in potential power. Of course, depends. We gotta see on what cards come out in future days. But you can already see why this card can be as powerful, if not more powerful, than Thirsty Dame. Now, we have our very first sights on the first evolving card of the new expansion. I believe it is said that every faction will get an evolving card, but this is the first one. It is based on the Usurper, which my master has cleverly deceived to take out Fergus var Emreis. And let's see what this card does. Let's take a look at the expansion trailer for the Usurper.
Let me tell you the tale of an emperor. No, not that fool Fergus var Emreis, the boar. This one, I believe you remember solely as the Usurper.
Introducing the Usurper, an evolving card that gains strength at the start of each round. The card depicts the Usurper's rise from lowly soldier through general, in order finally to become the Emperor of Nilfgaard. The Usurper excels at deploying spies behind enemy lines, and in final form can turn the most stalwart ally into a duplicitous foe. Seditious Aristocrats is one of the many new cards built to synergize with Usurper and flesh out the Nilfgaardian spy archetype. While a soldier at heart, the Usurper and his entourage gladly blur any lines of allegiance to achieve advantage.
Now, of course, as you can see, the Usurper is solely based on spy support as well. Now, with evolving cards, there are 3 different versions of them. Of course, each one leveling up as the rounds progress, but they must be in hand or in deck for this to work. Now, the thing here, interestingly, is that in order to get to its final form, it must be devoted. Which means that, again, you cannot have any neutral cards in your deck if you want this card to reach its final form. But let's analyze each form on its own. Now, their deployability is relatively similar. You spawn an operative in the opposite row, and on order, you seize all enemy operatives, and at the start of your round, while in hand or deck, transform. Now, this card has the ability to give your opponent some power, but it also has the ability to take it all away. But be careful when playing this card, because it can be very damaging if you're playing against a faction like monsters, which like to consume units. So if they manage to consume your operative before you even get a chance to play its order ability, then you've just lost value. But of course, with Zeal, you can prevent that, but I can already see those players, those victims, that are already planning to play greedy with the Usurper officer. Or the Usurper's final form, it matters not. Again, similar abilities. Because I can see this being combined with an ability like Strategic Withdrawal, even Decoy perhaps, anything that manipulates the field in which that you can return a card to your hand and replay its ability. This card, I can already see it being abused by Strategic Withdrawal and Elder Bear Damien Delatour. Especially if your opponent has no answer to such abilities. Heck, it can even make for a reverse swarm strategy that people have always complained about. But me, I've always liked that ability. So this should be fun. You can purposely use Usurper Officer's ability to prevent your enemy from spawning more units if you so desire. And then at the end, you just steal it all. This should be interesting. Let's go take a look at his successing form. So again, the ability is relatively similar. You spawn an operative in the opposite row, and then on Zeal and Order, on Order but with Zeal, you can seize all enemy operatives. And at the start of round, while in hand or deck, transform. Very similar, but again, it is capable of being abused, and it is actually quite ridiculous. Now the question is, why would you want to upgrade it to the next one if the ability pretty much is exactly the same? Let me show you why. Here is its final form, Usurper Emperor. This version has Veil, which means you cannot poison this thing. You can perhaps damage it by a card like Parasite or Decoction, in which case it will get destroyed. But if that's not the case, then again, similar thing, you spawn an operative in each enemy row. So pretty much instead of summoning it just on the opposite row, you actually summon 2 this time instead of 1. So you just added yourself 3 extra seize power, if of course you can get it to pull off. And whenever your opponent plays a unit, gives it spying. So this card also becomes an engine, which can become very powerful. However, like the weaknesses I've stated before, they are no different here. If your opponent consumes said operatives, then you lose your seize ability. Now, of course, that's not going to happen if you apply the order immediately. But like I said, there are opportunities for you to get greedy with this, such as Strategic Withdrawal, such as Elder Bear, you name it. If you get too greedy with it and your opponent finds a way to destroy operatives, you've just lost value. You've just been giving them more power. So you gotta be careful about being greedy with this card. But again, who knows? We don't know what other support cards Nilfgaard will get just yet. This is all we've seen so far. Now let's move on to the cards that were not on this article as of yet, but I assume they will be. So let's begin by the one that was revealed in the 983 TV Summer Jam competition tournament. Now, this is Fergus var Emreis, the Usurper's victim. Now, it's quite ironic, actually, that with Fergus being the enemy of the Usurper, he supports spies. Because on deploy, you give an enemy unit spying, but on devotion, you give enemy adjacent units spying. Which means that you can actually transform you can actually add spy status to 2 units on devotion. Now, this will help greatly boost the seditious aristocrats. This will help greatly boost Usurper. So Fergus var Emreis acts more of a support now to the Usurper. Because of course, Fergus var Emreis had to fall for the rise of the Usurper. Thanks to, of course, the Master Mirror. Next, we have another card that was revealed by the Merchants of Novigrad podcast. We have Will of the Wisp, which lets you destroy a doomed unit. This is going to be quite the chaotic card, especially if you can use a 5 provision card to destroy a very powerful but doomed unit. I can definitely see this as a more devastating version of Poison, because like I said, this disrupts more than just field play, it will disrupt graveyard play. This, ladies and gentlemen, should be a fun expansion, and I can't wait to start playing decks with it. Now, unfortunately, I believe that is all I have. That is everything I have on this expansion so far that the cards have been revealed. Of course, tune back next week to see more reveals. That is, assuming that more come out by next week. And of course, I must be the one to cover this because this falls in my area of expertise. I must do the gods' bidding. But of course, if you guys did enjoy this video, please leave it a like. Subscribe for more Gwent content. And of course, join my Discord as now I have permanent links. And if you don't, he will come for you.